What's going on, you guys? This is Fitz here again with the cheap setup, the corded mic, the whole nine. Because again, my primary job is not content creation. My primary job is wholesaling real estate. So in this video, I'll give you guys a case study, a breakdown, a detailed breakdown on how I made $33,000 in 30 days wholesaling a house I never saw before. I never stepped foot in this house. I didn't even send anyone out there to take pictures of this house. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. I'll give you everything from how I found the deal, the negotiation with the seller, how I found the buyer, what happened after I found the buyer, the details of that actual transaction, the whole nine. So if that's something that you're interested in, you're out there wholesaling and you've never done it before, or you want to see how other people are doing it and what other folks' experiences are, tap into this. Stay tuned. We're about to dive into the presentation now. I'll see you on the other side. All right, y'all. So let's rock out. How I made $33,000 in 30 days wholesaling a house I never saw before. All right, let me preface this. I'm not a full-time content creator. I'm going to say that. So my setup is not going to be super great. My presentation skills might not be the best, but I'm going to do the very best I can to walk you guys through how I made $33,000 in 30 days. I'm going to show you everything I can, in this short presentation. And it's not a how-to, but if you can, follow along and, see what I did, I'm pretty sure you can, get 90% of this done by yourself. So let's rock. All right. So who is Fitz? Who am I? I'm Fitz. Well, I don't know, right? That's stupid to say, but long story short, man, I come from a blockchain background, crypto. That's what I was, really, known for. That's what I was actually, out in the public doing. I used to, do meetups back in 2016. I used to rent buildings and stuff just to educate people on blockchain and Bitcoin technology. And eventually I started learning how to make money in that space. I did pretty well. The space changes so quick. So obviously the ways that you make money typically burn out after a while. I made a lot of money, and then I made some really stupid mistakes, and I had to go all the way back to zero. I'm talking about really press reset. That's how I got back into wholesaling. I was kind of forced to go back into wholesaling because before I got into crypto and blockchain, my field was real estate. And the only reason I got out of real estate is because I learned how to make so much money flipping Bitcoin daily. But for the past, couple of years, man, I went through a crazy depression state, man. When I say I lost everything, I lost everything. Friends, money, family, cars, watches, the whole nine. You hear me? So when I'm telling y'all this work, I'm telling you this shit work from a place of I need to make something happen. So that's who I am. Let's rock out. Man, you know what? I was supposed to put the photo of the wire here. What I'm gonna do is I'll edit this video and I'll just put all the photos up here during this part of the video, where I'll show you where the wire hit my account. I'll show you the text messages I had with the buyer. I'll show you the text messages I had with the seller. I'll show you the messages I had with the person who loaned me the money to double close on the property. Also, super interesting twist. I needed to bring some money to closing. Didn't have the money for closing. Also got that money from this person too. So I'll dive into that, a little later too. All right. So the backstory on this. Again, obviously, I'm starting from, very, very minimum means. And, and I kept trying different things. I'm learning how to use ChatGPT to program AI, trying to do online businesses. I'm creating digital products. I'm doing all of these different things. And it's been so long since I was in the real estate field, I forgot that I even had that knowledge, because when I dive into something, I really dive into it. And, I said, you know what? I'm just going to go back to wholesaling because at the end of the day, real estate has always been one of the most stable industries, period. I used to wholesale. I made money. I'm pretty sure there are different techniques and different ways to do things now. If you were ever playing like a video game or something like that, and you got stuck at a level and then you gave it a break and then you came back and you were able to beat that level, that's how I looked at, real estate wholesaling at the time. So I'm like, man, let me jump back into this thing. And I used to do masterminds and stuff with crypto. And, about a year and a half ago, I met this guy who had started doing wholesaling. And he told me that he started doing it. And we had a conversation about it briefly. And we followed each other on social media. So normally when I start doing something, I just post it on social media for whatever reason. Like, I've never been a super big creative. I've never been good at editing or any of that stuff. But for whatever reason, I typically post what I'm doing on social media. So when I posted a video on social media saying, hey, wholesaling is really marketing and sales, I'm just, again, getting in that groove for myself. And he reached out to me and was like, yo, bro, like, you understand it. You understand. He's like, most people don't understand that. He's like, let's hop on a call. We hopped on a call and he's like, man, I want to help you. I want to help you, I've done over 162, deals over like the last 18 months. And I've made this amount of money. He's like, this is what I'm doing. All you got to do is just do this. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to do exactly what he told me to do. So his instructions to me, and of course, me being me, thinking that, I had not even thinking, but me having that prior experience, I'm taking what he's saying and I'm like, okay, I hear what he's saying, but I can make it better. Right. So what he told me was go to PropStream. And he's one of the most like simple, straightforward guys I know. Like, he's always going to keep it super simple. And he's like, go to PropStream, get a list of absentee owners. He broke down the criteria for me. He's like, make sure that they're, out-of-state absentee owners. Make sure that, you put some tax liens on it. There's a couple other things he said. Make sure that there's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, basically the whole criteria of like the ideal wholesale deal. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, a lot of equity, out-of-state absentee, meaning that, they're out of the state, but they're in one state, but they own a house in another state. Minimum years of ownership, right? Just the whole basic criteria of what the typical wholesale. You can find that information on any YouTube video. Let me see how my computer just said it's about to die. I'm on 10%, y'all. So I'm gonna try to make this thing work. Anyway, so I followed the script, or I followed the plan. I went in and got that information. But before I did it, part 2 of my strategy, right? Because I'm getting information for the strategy. Part 2 was when I was wholesaling back in the day, I would go to the county and I would get the county data. I always thought that was like premium quality data. The issue with that data is you got to clean that data. So I wasted like 2 weeks hiring somebody on Upwork to clean that data because I love to get tax delinquent data. So I got tax delinquent data from like most of the counties here in Georgia. And then I got as many of the code violation list from the counties in Georgia as well. So I got those lists. I hired a virtual assistant on Upwork to clean that data up for me so that I could then go and skip trace it. So it took me 2 weeks to do that, right? Mind you, I really could have jump started and just did exactly what he told me to do right out of the gate. But I didn't. So anyway, that was the whole plan. Get list of people who would potentially have some type of motivation to sell. Either they live out of the state and they own a property in another state, which is typically a difficult thing to do and manage, or they owed some back taxes on the property and they were going to lose the property to a tax sale either way. So I thought if I could get in between those two audiences, I could, get some deals done. The key to getting in contact with them, the difference between what I used to do back in 2014, 2015 when I was wholesaling and what I did in 2023, I used to send direct mail, but my buddy told me that SMS, text messages, was working really, really well. So he said, yo, bro, just get this software, Launch Control. He's like, that's what I'm about to start using. I don't even think he was using Launch Control yet. He's like, yo, bro, get Launch Control. This is what to do. He didn't give me a detailed breakdown on how to, structure the whole follow up sequence or whatever. But he gave me like enough information to where I knew how to go and research to do more and fine tune the messages and all that good stuff. And I've typically been pretty good with systems and stuff like that. So I figured it out. Went to YouTube University and I figured it out. So my game plan was to get these lists of folks, skip trace the list, and then load the list up into Launch Control, which is a texting software, and start getting some leads so I can get some deals. So total cost for everything, PropStream costed me $99. PropStream costed me $99. It costed me about $1,500 to skip trace the leads that I got, which were about 10,000 leads. And my virtual assistant, because another thing that I did was I'm like, okay, well, let me try to cold call some of these lists as well. Some of these leads as well. I'm thinking I'm going to do texting and cold calling. And I cold call I didn't cold call, but I hired a virtual assistant to cold call for about a month or so. In a month and a couple of weeks, that cost me about $800. I used CRM, closed CRM, that cost me about $150 a month. Privy, which is a super dope software that allows you to basically price properties all around the nation. It's one of the only softwares that I know that has MLS access, like real lifetime MLS updated access across the nation on like all the major markets. Super worth this money. It's actually undervalued in my opinion at $150 per month. PandaDocs costs approximately $40 a month. That's what I use to send the agreement out. And Launch Control, which is the texting software, I have 579 here. I meant to put 479. It's really like 400, basically $500. Call it $500. That's how much it costs. So we add that up and we're somewhere around $2,500, something like that, right? It cost me between $2,500 and $3,000 for this part. I spent more money on small little different things, like the actual, what's not on here is what I spent on the virtual assistant on Upwork, which is how I got my cost up to, a little over $3,000 because I had to pay them, but I didn't put that virtual assistant on here. This is just the cold calling virtual assistant, which I should have never did in the first place, to be honest. All right. So once I got all of that stuff together, it was actually time to take action now. And I wanted to take action and my buddy wanted me to take action relatively quickly, which is why he gave me that, plan. So all throughout these 2-3 weeks where I got the virtual assistant, cleaning data from the county and stuff, I'm telling him what I'm doing and he's listening. He's not being disrespectful or anything. He's listening, but he's like, yeah, man, I hear you, but I really like this way here because it's so simple and it's straightforward. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, I agree, but I feel like I know a little something. and I wasted like 2 weeks doing that, to be honest. But once I pulled the list, but I did start taking action immediately. I didn't sit around and not take action throughout this whole entire process. One thing I did not do is sit around and wait. I took action. Even if it was bad action, false action, whatever the case was, I made sure that I took action. So the first thing I did, I went ahead and pulled the PropStream list, and then I went and pulled the list from the county because, again, I'm going back to my plan, my strategy. So I pulled the county list. I'm on the phone all day talking to the people, sending email of record requests so that they can send me the full list of data of properties that are tax delinquent and that have code violations. And I got those lists, sent them up to the virtual assistant. I pulled the list from PropStream, which was super easy, by the way. Takes maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes if it's your first time. Then step 2, sent that list to the virtual assistant that I found on Upwork. Step 3, I got that list back. It was nice and clean for me. That's why I had to send it to the virtual assistant so that it was organized in a way that the skip tracing service could, easily process the data. For those of you who don't know, skip tracing is when you send a property address and the owner's name, and they basically do some background research to figure out what their most recent phone number is. And it gives you not only their phone number, but it gives you anybody who's in association with them, their children, their husband, their spouse, their relatives, and it gives you their numbers, right? So if you can't get in contact with the actual person, you can get in contact with someone who knows them. So once we got it, once we sent the skip tracing up, now it was time to actually go into launch control, right? Launch control is the software that we use to send text messages. Sends text messages, it manages that whole process. Launch control actually worked great for me, can't speak highly enough of that. And the software, the technology is great. It's just with text messaging, you had those, different regulations and stuff come down that made texting a little bit difficult. Launch control is great. Pretty sure they went ahead and, navigated that and figured out some workarounds and stuff. And as of today, we are going to launch another launch control SMS campaign because so many people were ran away from or driven away from it when we start having those deliverability rate issues. I feel like it's kind of like a blue ocean right now. So I'm going to go and start another SMS campaign. I prepped my CRM. I've always been pretty good with CRMs. That was my strength when I wholesaled back in 2014, 2015. So I used Close, which is something I was familiar with from another business I tried to start. And I fell in love with how easy it was to use, how encompassing it was, how great the support was. And I just went in there, I created some custom fields, I created some workflows for some SMS. I, just started playing around with it because I knew I needed somewhere to house my leads. When I started getting leads, I needed somewhere to put them so that I can easily follow up with them. And I understood from back when I wholesaled the first time that follow-up was everything. If I wasn't following up with leads, I was leaving money on the table, and it would be more difficult for me to get a deal. So I wanted to make sure I had all of that together. So I prepped my CRM. I didn't go overboard, but I made sure I got some custom fields in there, just enough for me to really track, like what's going on really. So once I prepped my CRM, now it was and at this point, launch control has my follow-up messages, my initial outgoing messages, and all that stuff. I started with the $500 account, which allowed me to send 10,000 messages per month. Now, the thing about launch control is even though you're sending 10,000 messages per month, that doesn't mean you're sending to 10,000 people. So that list of 10,000 that I got from PropStream, it doesn't mean that I'm hitting all 10,000 of those people because launch control is going to text up to 3 numbers for one individual person. So for example, if it texts one number and that number, someone texts back and say wrong number, or, it's on a do not call list or something like that, launch control will automatically target that next number and it'll target each of those 3 numbers until it's on the do not call list, or until you say wrong number, or until you verify that number is actually right. Maybe one day I'll go over a launch control tutorial or something like that because it is a powerful software. So we got our text messages right. I started sending like 100 and 150 text messages a day just to kind of see what was going on. And lo and behold, I immediately started getting people to respond, which was great because when I wholesaled before, one of my biggest issues was I wasn't getting enough leads. I wasn't talking to enough people every single day. And this is a business where your biggest objective is to figure out, how do I get leads in every single day? How can I talk to somebody every single day? Because the more people you talk to, the more offers you can make. The more offers you make, the more contracts you can get. The more contracts you get, the more closings you can get. Obviously, a closing equals money. So the goal is to talk to as many people per day. So at this point, I felt like I cracked the code. So I ramped it up from 150 text messages to like 300 to 500 text messages every day. And this is on like the smallest launch control plan. So I felt really good. I felt like I crossed like some milestone in my wholesaling journey, because so many wholesalers are stuck at the lead generation point where it's like, how do I get more leads? How do I get more leads? Why am I not getting deals? And really the real answer is you don't have enough leads to get You don't have enough leads to talk to enough people to make enough offers to get enough deals. So when I learned how to text, I felt like I crossed this major milestone. So my process, what I was instructed to do, was when someone texts back, you immediately just pick up the phone and call them. Again, I didn't listen. I'm texting them a little bit, trying to, figure out some more stuff, because I'm like, again, I'm thinking I know stuff, right? Eventually, I found my groove. Sometimes depending on the messages, I will pick up, call immediately. Sometimes folks would tell me that, hey, they're available during this time or that time. But anytime somebody responded, I would have them sent over to my CRM so that, I could follow up with them. I could keep track of our conversation and all of that. So as I'm getting on the phone with people at this point, I'm realizing that I'm comfortable talking to people on the phone. That's not an issue. But I have no real sales skills. I don't know what I'm doing. I've gotten contracts before, but it was face to face, me dealing with people who just felt my energy in that place. And getting a deal in person, in my opinion, is much easier than getting a deal done over the phone, because they can see and feel your energy in person. Over the phone, you're literally trying to convince somebody to sell you a house without you even seeing the house in person and without them ever seeing you. It's a big task. It's a big jump. So I'm just basically trying to build rapport with these people. And at this time, I'm not as sharp as I am now with pulling comps. I'm not as confident as I am now with pulling comps. So, a lot of those conversations were not what I'm doing now, which is one call closes. It was a lot of just getting some information and talking to them and kind of seeing what price they wanted, and saying, hey, I'll call you back with an offer, so that I could just start researching. The thing that I want to get you guys to, see here is I took a lot of action. I didn't allow me not knowing something to stop me from taking action. I knew I needed to take action, and I took crazy action, and that's what I did. Next thing, step 8 was when I finally did get a few people, and actually in the first 30 days, I know I said I closed one deal, but in reality, I got 4 contracts that first month. Got one in Savannah, one in Augusta, one in Alabama, one in Virginia. The one in Virginia, I count it, but I don't count it because I was so scared that I wouldn't be able to sign it, that when they had some pushback on something that I had an agreement, I didn't even really push back on it. And then by the time I circled back a couple weeks later, they said, oh, I sold it to a neighbor. And they really gave me the house for what they owed. So that was a slip up on my part. Again, lack of confidence. And the one in Alabama, that was another. So we'll tell you about that later. But long story short, the important part about step 8, when it came to getting them contracts signed, I didn't think about that I didn't have a contract to send these people as I'm trying to make offers. I didn't care about that. I said, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to get them to agree to a price. And then when I get somebody to say yes, I'll figure out where to get a contract from. So I'm at this point, I don't even have a contract in place. So I want you guys to keep that in mind too. So setbacks and challenges, I've kind of been hinting at those already. And those setbacks and challenges, the biggest one was, one, I didn't listen to my buddy. Realistically, I should have went straight to what he told me, because the response rate that I got from the method that he told me was much higher than what I thought I knew. What I thought I knew, it worked, but it was a much longer process, much more tedious process. I had to do a lot more with that data. And the messaging that I had for that, it just wasn't that great. People were getting pissed off. I'll tell you guys about that another time, because we are like 23 minutes and I want to keep this, kind of tight. And I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a community. I didn't have anybody to piggyback or any ideas or suggestions off of. And although my buddy was helping me, he's full-time doing his own thing. I didn't want to keep bothering him because he was already helping me for free, and he had already given me the plate. I just had to run the play. So I was doing my best to just run the play and just bring back some results to him and like, yo, bro, I appreciate that. And eventually I did. So the big win came about 14 days in. It took me about 14 days to get this contract. The seller, we signed with the seller at $77,000. Found a buyer. The next day, you guys will see this on the photos, on the timestamps and stuff, either the next day or 48 hours later, for $110,000. And we made a profit of $33,000 on that. When all of the fees and all that stuff were done, we made $33,000 on that. And when I say we, I'm talking about my company. I didn't JV with anybody. This was all mine, right? So here's the real story of what happened, because what will happen is people will see those numbers and think that it was all hunky dory and everything was cool. Like, no, in order for me to get to that contract, I had to lose contracts, because remember I said I got like 4 contracts the first month. I lost contracts, so I had to sharpen my teeth on other contracts, talking to other sellers. That was one thing. 2, I had no negotiation skills. But luckily for me, the seller didn't have any negotiation skills either. So I knew enough that I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what this guy really wants. And he wanted to fix up his house, his actual house. And I kind of got some of the backstory of what was going on. So I kind of leaned into that a little bit. And he was actually talking to someone else who wanted to put him on like a 4-month contract. And I'm like, I don't see why they want to do that, and I later figured out why. The real situation was when I sent the contract up to the attorney's office, and I actually used my buyer's attorney, which I don't recommend. I recommend you have your own title company and attorney and stuff like that, so you could build a strong relationship with them. But I felt comfortable with her vibe, and she moved so quick. I kind of knew she wasn't, BSing around, because what I did was I used Privy. The software I told you guys that I paid for in the beginning, to look in the area and see who flipped a house in the last 6 to 12 months. And I called everybody, called the people who own the houses. I called the agents, and I reached out to everybody, and everybody wanted it. All right, y'all. So my computer just died, but the part where I left off at was I used Privy to find the buyer. A lot of people were interested. One buyer in particular, she went straight over there. She said she peeped through the window. She like, yo, I want it. I used her attorney. Again, I don't recommend that. I recommend using your own, attorney, but she had a good vibe. She had good energy. She moved super quick. So I appreciated that. Now, on to as far as what happened with the actual, deal itself. The person who I had under contract was the person on record who owned the house with the county. But the thing was, the way that he got ownership of the house was the interesting part. So come to find out, he had power of attorney over one of his family members who he helped manage some of his properties. He had already sold all the other properties. This particular property, he quit claimed it to himself. He said he had permission from the family member and stuff like that. The county reflected that. So he's been paying the taxes on it all these years, all that good stuff. We send that to the attorney, and the attorney is like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, you can't be a power of attorney and, basically be the beneficiary or benefit from your own power of attorney. Like, how are you going to do that? So he didn't want to put his license on the line. So he said, hey, this transfer was invalid. So technically the owner of the property are the children of the relative who he was managing the property for, because the relative had already passed away due to COVID years ago. So now he had to go and find, well, actually not find, he knew where they were. I think it was like 3 or 4 different family members, and one lived in Atlanta, one lived in Savannah, one lived in Orlando. So they're all over the place. So he had to convince them to actually quit claim the property over to him, so that we didn't have to send 3 or 4 different purchase agreements to each one of them. And he worked out something with them. When he told me he had to go and tell them to sign the quit claim, in my mind, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a dead deal. This is not going to happen. And lo and behold, I followed up with him, and he was saying that, yeah, I spoke to him, they're on board. And yeah, it took some coordination on my part, and I had to pay for a notary to go out to a couple of the folks. And I also had to send my card to a few UPS locations so that they didn't have any, charges when they went up there. Everything was already taken care of, and it was a super easy transaction. So that took a couple weeks to really work out as well. And we got it done really quick, because sometimes those things, when you're dealing with multiple different people, that can drag out for months, because obviously when money is involved, feelings and emotions start to change. Luckily for us, everybody was on the same accord, which was like kind of like something that was just like God must have knew I needed this deal to go through. So we got all the information, all the contracts signed. I mean, all the quit claim deeds signed. We sent it up to the attorney. The attorney was like, "Okay, we're good to go." Then I get an email from the attorney, and they're like, "Hey, your LLC is not registered." And I'm like, "What?" And I didn't have the money to pay for my annual registration. To be completely honest, I did not have the money to pay for that annual registration. So I'm sitting here like, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And again, not really allowing myself to have any excuses. I said, you know what? Let me ask if they can just put this on the HUD statement. I'll just take it out of my fee. So I emailed her, hey, is there a way that you guys can do it? Since you guys are attorneys, can you just become my registered agent and pay the fee, and I'll just take it out of my closing? And they said, yeah. I was like, man, that was super clutch. So at this point, I'm thinking the deal is done. It's a for sure thing, closing is scheduled. So then they send me the settlement charges. And they're like, okay, cool. You're going to have to, and I wanted to double close because the money that I was making, I didn't want any issues from the buyer or the seller. I didn't want the buyer to feel some type of way that I was making, basically just as much as she was going to make on a flip. I didn't want the seller to feel any type of way. Mind you, I did a lot of problem solving for both parties, so I don't feel bad about it at all. That's our job, to problem solve, right? If there's no problem involved, 9 times out of 10, it ain't no wholesale deal. So I wanted to do what's called a double close, meaning that me and the seller's transaction would be finalized and the buyer wouldn't know any details of that transaction. And then I would finalize the transaction between me and the actual buyer. So those two, entities never had to meet. There wasn't a shared doc showing, what I bought it, what I sold it for. It was completely exclusive, right? And you'll see more professional, more advanced wholesalers use that strategy more often than not, just to eliminate any issues. The issue with that situation was I needed to bring about $3,000, maybe $3,500 to close, because when you're doing that, you got to pay both of those closing fees. Both of those closing costs, sets of closing costs. And again, I didn't even have the money at the time to reinstate my LLC, because I had already spent all of my money on marketing. I spent money experimenting, marketing, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, where am I going to get $3,500 from? And on top of the $3,500, actually, before I needed the $3,500, I'm sorry, I got to go back a little bit. The attorney told me that, so when I wholesale back in 2015, 2016, I did double closings back then. The attorney that I used here in Atlanta allowed me to use the buyer's funds to close on the first deal. And then we can use those same funds to close on that second transaction. This attorney didn't allow that. So I had to actually go and find the $77,000 to actually close on this first. And you can do that through transactional lenders and stuff like that. And I was calling around looking for transactional lenders and stuff. And then it dawned on me to call a guy who I knew, who I used to wholesale a lot of properties to his family. And I knew he had a lot of capital. He had grown in his investment career. He had cash, and he's a pretty advanced real estate investor. So something told me to call him. I called him. I sent him a text, actually, and I'll send you guys this text. I'll show you guys this text on the screen somewhere as well. But I asked him, do you have a second? I picked up the phone and I called him and was like, hey man, I got this deal in Savannah. It's already done. I got the seller on the contract. I got the buyer on the contract, ironed out everything. It's going to cost me $77,000 to close. Are you able to do some transactional lending for me? He's like, yeah, I do transactional lending. How much is it? What are the, the issues? What are the details? As a matter of fact, here's this email. Send everything to this email. I sent everything to the email. I told him some of the things I just didn't have. He was like, no worries. They went ahead and called their attorney ASAP, worked out everything. I didn't even know they had they had a conversation with the attorney, but naturally that's what's going on. They're going to call the attorney to make sure everything is on the up and up, make sure that their funds are protected. He charged me 1% for that $77,000. And the way that the transactional funding works is I'm not responsible. I don't have to, take money out of my pocket and just pay him. The attorney puts that on the HUD statement so that when the transaction is done, they automatically know where to send that stuff. So I wasn't in charge of any of that. The attorney handled all of that. The next issue, even though I had the $77,000 now to actually close on it, I didn't have $3,500, which was the closing cost. And at that point, I didn't know then that I could have just baked that into the actual loan, the $77,000. So I could have made it for like $80,000, a little over $80,000. But at that point, I had already filled out the agreement, sent it back, and I would have had to wait over the weekend or drive 4 hours down to Savannah and then another 4 hours back, just to get that agreement signed or updated. So I called the same transactional lender. I was like, hey man, I really need your thoughts on this. I need $3,500. I don't know what to do, where I can get it from. The deal is good, and I just told him what was going on. He's like, man, you know what? I trust you. I'll tell you what, send me your Zelle. I'll send you an email. He sent me an email saying that, exactly how much he was giving me and, what was due back. He didn't charge me anything on top of it. And when I responded back to that, he sent the Zelle over and I went and got a money order and I sent that to my attorney. And that was that. So that's the real story of how the deal actually got closed. So if you guys, peep game, I had to deal with, multiple people, the title issues. I had to deal with no funds. I had to deal with, no money on multiple occasions. I had to deal with, running around, coordinating 3 or 4 different people and coaching the seller on how to get them to sign a quick claim deed and how to structure that conversation. I had to deal with the buyer side, because the buyer's calling me, hey, what's going on? Are we still good? And I'm massaging that situation. So it's becoming, it doesn't take up your whole day, but there's things that come up. And on top of that, again, my account, just to be super transparent with you guys, I'm just giving you guys the real, like how much this shit really jump started my business and how much it saved me for real. My account was negative. I couldn't even afford to have that $33K go into my account that was negative because I'm like, man, you know what? I really need all this money right now. Like I got to turn up my business. So I went and started a new bank account, new business bank account just to receive those funds so that I would have the entire amount. And I said, you know what? That negative bank account, like that'll ride out for a second. This right here is a little more important. We go get this and we're going to go back into our marketing and we're going to keep turning it up. So that was the decision that I made in that case. All right. Let's see what I have here. So the lessons, here are some major lessons and takeaways. And let me move my face out of the way. Here are some major lessons and takeaways that I have from that. So one, listen to the people who are ahead of you. I could have saved so much time and money had I just listened to my buddy who gave me a really straight, narrow path on, who to target, what software to use. And I could have got started immediately that day. But his coaching was paramount because it was even at one point where he sat me down in a coffee shop and let me hear how he was on the phone. Now, he didn't give me any super official sales training or anything, but just me being able to watch him and listen to him take a lead on the phone, it opened up my mind to show me, okay, this is how the call is supposed to go. So that was great. Having a mentor, having somebody next to you who's doing it, major, major, major value. Second thing I learned is all you need is one marketing channel. You need one marketing channel to make $1 million. People talking about do MLS and direct mail and SMS and cold call, all of them work. But I realized that if I just double down on just that one and, based on my experience now, I know all you need is one channel. That's it. Whichever one you choose, you master it, you hammer it until you perfect it, and that's going to get you $1 million. I haven't made $1 million wholesale, complete transparency, but the math is making sense if you understand what I'm saying. Third major lesson and takeaway: don't think, just do. Notice all the time when I was speaking about action, I didn't overthink anything except when I thought I knew more than my buddy knew, or not more than he knew, but I knew something additional than he knew, and I wanted to mix the sauces together. Even then, I didn't overthink it. I just did it. I didn't allow anything to stop me from moving forward. So action, massive action, was like one of the biggest advantages that I had. Because shit, you start overthinking, guess where you're going to end up at? The same place you started overthinking, which is in the same damn spot. So next, the last thing, most important lesson and takeaway is like most wholesale deals have some type of cobwebs to clean up. If there were not any cobwebs, we would not be in business, because why else are you selling a house at a discount if you don't have any cobwebs, if you don't have a situation, if you don't have a problem, if you don't have any issues? That's what we're in the business of, marketing and sales, and solving those problems. It just so happens to have a house attached to it. That's it. And we get paid big bucks for that. We get paid 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, sometimes $100,000 for that. One of my biggest wholesale deals was actually when I was wholesaling back in 2014, 2015, I had a deal that was worth $100,000. And let me show you how things come back full circle. The transactional lender and the same, who was the same guy who lent me that $3,500 to close on the transaction and the $77,000 to close on the transaction, I used to wholesale houses to his sister. She was like my best client, and I would always give her first dibs. There was one house that I could have made $100,000 on. Instead of making $100,000 on it, I gave it to them for a $50,000 discount in exchange for allowing me to shadow them through their process of tearing the house down and rebuilding it up, because I wanted to learn how to do that. Fast forward 6-7 years later, that brother remembers the stories his sister used to tell about me, and now we have a really strong working relationship where I can lean on him for many different things. And I can't remember. Oh yeah, and the reason why I said that is because I could have made $100,000, transaction on that, but I ended up walking away with $50,000. So that was my biggest wholesale deal to date. So I haven't had a $50,000 deal yet. This second stint around, but I have had a $33,000 deal, which is what we're talking about now. This has been my biggest. My normal average size right now is about 25K. So here's what I'm doing now. Right now, I've kind of shifted my marketing from SMS because something happened with the regulations that slowed down SMS deliverability rate. And again, I had just made money. I had a few deals on the contract, had a couple closings. I'm like, I'm ready to, keep rocking and rolling. So I had to find another way of generating leads. And I went to PPL, pay per lead, which is basically a derivative of pay per click. It's Google. People who are already raising their hand saying, hey, I want to, sell my house. I don't want to use an agent. I want a quick sell. I'm in financial difficulties, whatever the case is. They raise their hand. So those conversations are much easier to have. And those people actually want to be on the phone with you. So that's where I pivoted to. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Since then, it was just me. Now it's 4 other people. I have 3 acquisition guys. I have 1 disposition guy. I have 3 acquisition guys. 1 disposition guy. My team is basically completely virtual. Got somebody out of South Africa, got somebody out of Texas, 2 people in Georgia. And, I basically got them together piece by piece by showing them that I was capable of leading, by showing them that I was capable of marketing, by showing them that I was capable of consistently getting leads in that would give us opportunity to get contracts. So right now we're on a mission to really, see how far we can take this thing. Our goal is to grow this business to $500,000 per month. All of those guys are commissioned. I'm the sole owner of my business. And one of those guys, he has his own business as well, and I don't mind when he decides to branch off and continue to run his business. That's fine, because we're both sharpening each other throughout this this whole situation. But what I want to invite you guys to is a free community that I created called Blue Ocean Wholesaling, because I have a lot more information, a lot more knowledge that I can share with you guys. This is just a case study. And mind you, it's my first case study. It's my first deal for me coming back. I've done many deals since then, and I've learned so much since then. I've joined different mentorships. I've seen what other people are doing. I'm wholesaling nationwide at this point. I've flipped deals in Indiana, Texas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. So it's building up now, and I want to be able to serve the same role that my buddy served for me, to kind of help you guys, stop making excuses and give you a really clear, straightforward path to your first deal or your next deal. Maybe you're slow. You're not getting, and when I say slow, I mean maybe your business is slow and you aren't getting consistent leads every day. I want to help you get those leads every single day. I want to help you get your sales script together. I want to help you capitalize on the things that I didn't know how to do or that I wasn't clear on, So getting a sales script, knowing which lead source to use, knowing what not to do, because half the battle is knowing what not to do. Notice I did some things that I didn't even mention on this call, that should not have been done, that were done, that's costing me time and money, So if that's something that you guys are interested in, I got a free community. The link will be below if you're not already in it. I don't even know where I'm posting this video at. I'm just super excited, man, that, things are finally, clicking. Things are finally clicking, man. Like, I literally started this thing by myself, and I have a whole team now. We have multiple closings. We got multiple contracts on the table. We're averaging 2 contracts a week right now. And it's just a beautiful thing, man. And I want to help as many of you guys as possible. So if that's something that you're interested in, you think that, we share something in common, or you're in a similar place, or we're in a similar place, or if you just want to collab, man, check out the free community, come in, tap in, and let's work. Even if we JV some deals, whatever the case is, man, let's work. I hope you guys learned something from this deal. So if anything, if you have one major takeaway from it, I hope that is to take action. Do not make excuses. Do not let a lack of resources stop you from doing some dope shit. All right. Till next time. Peace out, y'all.